I wonder how it's going up there.
We've come out of today winning 4 out of
What?
5.
There's no way.
Yeah, the Black
I need to know the
Wings were
truth.
kind of ridiculous. 1, we've completed the first challenge, meaning some
My
things
time
are about
has
to
come.
happen, because with challenges comes...
It's time. We've got every prerequisite. We've got all the money in the world to spend. We have to go hunting for this man. Oh boy, I have been dreading this moment since the start of the series because I knew it was going to happen and I knew it was my goal to do so. So here we go. Lost Memories 2020 tins. So this set is a massive reprint set for those that don't know, but I'm assuming everybody knows. And it contains the one and only Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. That was loud. Right, so we are going to simply drop these packs out. And then this will become storage, because for some reason in the 2020 10 there's no promos, and I don't know why. I've always wondered why there was no promos in the 2020 10s, but regardless, today's opening, and probably the openings for the next couple of episodes, are just going to be these 3. These tins, for me, are about 15 bucks, meaning we will save $5 off of this episode to open some golden cardboard. So in this set, there is also more cards that we can have general use for, actually. It's not just Dragoon, but Dragoon is our main goal here. And now I have to work with the focus because, as you've seen in the last couple of episodes, it's been dog shit. Dino Wrestler Chimera T-Rextal, another Dino Wrestler Marshall Onga, Speedburst Dragon, Hyper Psychic Ricer, Valkyrie Funft, Guard Dragon Reincarnation, Overburst Dragon, I like that name, Borreload X-Charge Dragon, Infinitrack Harvester, Storm Dragon's Return, Cyber's Quantum Dragon, Subterror Guru, this should be when we start getting the good stuff. Oh no, Vessel for the Dragon Cycle, Draw Discharge, Marincis Snow, Jelly Cannon, Marincis Current, Ron Ryu. Did I miss something here? What's... Oh, I'm stupid, these were the supers. Oh god, I'm dumb. I'm so dumb. These 4 were the supers and ultras, and this was the secret rare. Oh, I'm a fucking monkey, aren't I? Oh well, nothing in that pack that we're going to use anyway. I should probably pay attention to what is around me. Yeah, you'll see that there's a camera shadow on this episode because the lighting I've been doing for the last 2 episodes has been absolute dog shit. So I now have to use a light that is right up there to prevent people from having, like, freaking seizures. And yeah, understandably, don't want to force my viewers to have epileptic seizures. That's probably a good thing, right? Time Thief Hack, Chaos Betrayer, World Legacy Guard Dragon Mardark, Apple of Enlightenment, Tenyu Spirit Mapura, Mordschlag, Saraziel, Ruler of the Evil-Eyed, Bye-Bye Damage, Witchcrafter Pottery, I love this card, it is adorable, Valkyrie Secht, Gizmek Yada, the Gleaming Vanguard is our secret rare, not very useful for us, Barricade Block Borger, Beast United, Draping, Desert Locusts, Marincis Sea Angel, Monk of the Tenyi, Best Blaster Cannon Core. Damn it, another pack with nothing we can really use. This is about as good as I expected these openings to go, to be frank. It's lost tints. There are so many cards in this set, and we are hitting one specific one, right? Tenyu Spear Adhara. Guardragon Justica. There's a vanilla in this set. Wow. Pegasus Wing. World Legacy Cliffhanger. And this is a cliffhanger. Guardragon Andrake. Guardragon Shield. Is that a... Oh yeah, it's a Super Ace item mining. Cool. Super Ace Shinobi Necro. Gizmic Orchid, the Serpatron Sky Slasher. Infinitrack Anchor Drill. Oh, we got a Prismatic Striker Dragon. That's unfortunate. I actually already own one of these. No Gaze Flame, Gladiator Beastatron, blah blah blah, Bacillus, Mandarin, Kichobapa, Cerbide, Ronyaru. That was not the pull that I wanted. A Striker Dragon's cool if we ever decide to drop into Dragon Links. Yada's kind of cool, but it doesn't do us anything. Yeah, no. As far as this pack goes, that was kind of garbage. I can't even keep my camera correct. That's how garbage that was. Yeah, expect this for our openings for a while. We take these cards, we slap them in the binder, and we go on with this week's duels, hoping we can earn some more.
What a wonderful day for card games. I wonder what splendid great obelisk. What the hell?
Hello there, Murchi.
Hold on. Why are you here? And didn't I tell you to stop teleporting into my store?
I need to set up shop. Mind if I use the basement?
Wait, he actually managed to complete the challenge.
Yup. So I need to do some research before I get the contracts going.
No rest for the wicked. I'll close the shop then.
Oh boy, I do wonder what kind of rewards I'll get for finishing that challenge. Wait, why is there a sign on the door? Closed?
What the actual hell is a pendulum monster?
If you didn't watch the update video, now would be a good time to do so, because welcome to YGO Omega. For our first ever duel on YGO Omega, we're going up against Drytrons, to where our opponent activates Drytron Zeta Alcabrand, to which we chain an Ash Blossom, because that's kind of, you know, their whole deal is that they want to ritual summon monsters real damn quickly, and yeah, if they get off like they are doing right now, there's not much that we're going to be able to do. Our opponent managed to get a Ben 10 into their hand, activating Union Carrier to equip it with a Dawn Knight, breaking both of them in order to summon Ben 10. Dawn Knight's effect activates dumping of a Drytron to the graveyard, which can special summon itself by sacrificing Ben 10. And this loop is going to go on for a very long time. Our opponent will keep looping at Ben 10 over and over again until they end their turn on a Vanity's Ruler, which essentially shuts our entire game down, knowing that we can't special summon anything. I attempt to go into it anyway, simply setting a dragon and hoping that he'll bash into it so I can flip Vanity's Ruler back to his hand. But as you can probably think, there's going to be no such luck here. Our opponent will keep flooding the board enough to essentially go in for lethal on their first turn should they really want to. Ben 10, Herald of Perfection, and of course Vanity's Rules just sits there negating us out of anything useful. At this point, I decide that, yeah, we don't really have a way out of this even if he bashes into Dragon, so I simply scoop them up and I go into game number 2. Game number 2, on the other hand, is an absolute nail-biter by comparison. We start off by activating Alatir Lister, gaining us an Invocation, which we decide to just pop off immediately going into Mekka. Then, of course, pulling Aliester back into our hand. We then set one card and pass with 2 ashes in hand. Our opponent goes into Terraforming, which draws him into Drytron Fafnir, which he activates immediately, which we decide to Ash Blossom to make sure he doesn't get any more value out of it. He then immediately goes back into Ben 10, attempts to activate his Drytron, which we decide to negate because I don't want it to keep reoccurring. Our opponent then activates Cyber Emergency and then manages to get into Alpha Thuban anyway, getting back Cyber Ben 10 to his hand. And oh boy, here it comes again. As you can see, Drytron combos are one of the same, where they want to go into as much beating as possible, but this time he goes into the Assembled Nightingale. Essentially, it gains 200 attack per material it has on it, and it can attack once per material. He then stacks up to a Zeus, which obviously we can't negate, which is unfortunate, which now has 2 materials. Zeus is a bit difficult. We decide to pop Alatir Lister again, but he gets negated, unfortunately, using Herald of Orange Light. We then just simply have to pass our turn, hope our opponent doesn't have anything, but he draws it to a Cyber Emergency. Emergency drives him into Delta once again, and he activates to go into get Draconic into his hand, rather. The combo continues, and unfortunately we are just sitting ducks at this point, and I'm going, okay, are we just gonna have to scoop yet another game, or is he going to screw up somewhere? But no, his full combo goes off, and he summons Metatonus Draconids, if that is how you pronounce it, which is essentially their massive beat stick that just can't be dealt with. We are forced to banish our turtle to avoid dying this turn, but we do draw into a magical meltdown, so I'll go, okay, do I have a way out? I decide to activate Alistair. Alistair draws us an invocation, but it's destroyed, unfortunately. We still activate invocation in order to go into Purgatrio, which he is forced to Zeus out, which is kind of what we wanted to do, because we can't take a Zeus hit, we can't take a hit from a 4k beater. He wipes the field clean, Zeus now having no material. We take Alistair back to our hand, and we just pass the turn to our opponent. Our opponent then begins using Drytrons once again to simply try to swarm the board, but fail in doing so, forcing their Zeus out into a Union Carrier, going into the Dawn Knight combo once again, in order to go back into Ben 10. Dawn Knight's effect will then activate, and here they come again, I think to myself. But no, our opponent then reveals Eva, which is a bit strange, but sure. And he goes into Kinkagishi Fuko, which is just... it just makes itself unkillable for one turn, essentially. He does have a Herald of Orange Light in his hand now, so now he has a negate, but we will drop Alistair anyway. We go into Invocation, we attempt to activate it, and we get a Mekk-Knight, using the Ben 10 from his graveyard, which actually turned out to be important. But on that board, we are forced to pass as the birdie cannot be destroyed. He then activates Dark Ruler no more, completely ignoring anything setup-wise that we could have done, and he begins the Drytron loop again, this time going into Herald of Perfection. Perfection is less scary than his big Drakey boy, because we can actually deal with it, it's just one negate. But then he goes into Relinquished Anima, and Anima steals our Mekk-Knight, and now we're in a shitty spot. We top deck Shaddoll Fusion, so I go, okay, I need to get Invocation back to my hand, because otherwise I'm just screwed. But then we decide to go Invocation, which obviously is going to get negated, but we activate Shaddoll Fusion and Chain in order to... well, first of all, we special summon Beast off of Winda's effect, drawing Winda into our hand, but then we choose to perma-negate Relinquished Anima to leave it at 0 attack and being useless. We then take our monsters and simply beat over his bird, we beat over his Parallel Perfection, and at this point, he's in top deck mode. He manages to get a Cyber Emergency, pulling Alpha Thuban back to his hand. He activates it, summoning Zeta. Drytron comes back to his hand. Alpha summons this from Zeta. Drytron freaking Ritual Spell, and Benton comes out. Benton punches into our face-down Beast, which is going to deal us a chunk of damage, because Benton's effect is if it destroys something by battle, it will deal its defense in life point damage. So we take a fair chunk of damage from that, but at this point, it's looking smooth for us. We draw into a Squamata, which isn't necessarily too helpful. We flip open Dragon, force him to return Benton to his hand. We simply set another dragon in case he does pop off once again, and then we just go in with the entire crew, hoping at this point that he doesn't top deck into anything, because if he doesn't, game will be next turn. We beat him with everything, pass to our opponent, but first we decide to go into Predaplant Anaconda, because I want to lock him out of doing his loops if I can help it. So we are able to pick back up an Shaddoll Fusion from this, which we are going to set, and immediately when he attempts to special summon something, we're going to fuse off Dragon and Anaconda into Winda to prevent him from summoning anything else. Of course, he goes into Drytron Fafnir off his top deck, which is terrible for us, but in comes the Drytron special summoning spell that I can't remember the name of for the time being. As he does that, we activate Shaddoll Fusion, going into Winda, preventing him from special summoning anything else. It is destroyed during the end phase, and we go in for game. After this, our opponent left the game, giving us a bye, unfortunately. For the second duel of today, we're playing up against the classic Frogs. We've seen these guys a couple of times now, it should be no issues. We start off with the worst hand in existence, however, so we decide to just set our Trick Clown, set Allure, and Super Poly, and hope for the best. Our opponent Lightning Storms, bringing them both off the field. We Ash his Swap Frog, which gets met with a Triple Tactics talent, so basically he doesn't care that we Ashed and we did it for nothing. He still manages to go off into his Frog combos, unfortunately getting both Ronin Toad and Swap Frog on the field, of course summoning the best boy, Toad. Toad attacks into our Trick Clown, which we are just going to activate the effect of to bring back and take 1,000 damage from it. Our opponent then passes turn, to which we draw an instant fusion. During our standby phase, he does decide to activate Totally Awesome's effect to special summon a frog, which is A-OK. We decide to activate Shaddoll Fusion, which he doesn't negate for some reason, so we summon Apkalone in order to attempt to negate it. However, he has a Dynamiscus set that destroys us, and now we're in a bad spot again. We do manage to set a beast at the very least, and negate his frog, because Dynamiscus still lets us do that. We activate our instant fusion in order to get to Raijin, flipping himself face down to prevent his destruction, so that we can use him next turn. And of course, Totally Awesome is not strong enough to beat over 2,400 defense. He decides to attack into our beast, drawing us 2 cards, so as we discard Mathematician, keeping the Shaddoll Fusion in hand, and he just passes turn. Perfect. We flip open Raijin and we prepare to go in for the attack. First, however, we decide to use our Shaddoll Fusion to go into Construct, getting both Trick Clown and Windless Effect to try and build our board as much as possible. Since the frog can't negate anymore, he's kind of dead in the water at this point. Dragon manages to pop his Oilinoides in the back row. Construct goes in for some damage as he picks up a swap frog, that's what it is, as we go in for the attacks and we pass our turn. With 4 cards in hand, our opponent decides to go into the swap frog combo yet again that we decide to simply flip face down using Raijin, and he scoops. Game number 2 against the Froggy Fellows. And our starting hand this time is a fair bit better considering we're playing up against frogs. He does the same combo again going into Swap Frog, with which we again attempt to use our Ash for, and he again has a triple tactics talent in his hand. That's disgusting. He manages to do the Swap Frog combo regardless, going into Ronin Toadin, and kid you guess, Totally Awesome enters the stage. Who would have thunk? He then sets 2 cards and passes the turn to us. During the standby phase, of course, he's going to special summon a frog from his graveyard, but he also activates anti-spell fragrance, whatever, which is actually kind of bad for us because we really want to activate our spells. However, we simply special summon the sideboarded Pankratops, bashing into his dupe frog, as that is the only thing we can target with attacks as long as it's face up on the field. But after that, we can't really do much else, so we are simply forced to pass our turn, to which our opponent begins the Swap Frog combo again. This time going into the Phantom Knight of Cursed Javelin. A lot of things happen here at once, but essentially he attempts to pop our Pankratops. We pop our own Pankratops in order to destroy Totally Awesome. Totally Awesome chooses to negate it to avoid being destroyed, sacrificing itself, going to the graveyard, picking up a frog to his hand. He then bashes into our Wendy, which summons a beast to the board, which we decide to immediately flip open and try to draw into something more useful. We draw into an Shaddoll Fusion, as well as a Shaddoll Hedgehog, which gives us a dragon, which is pretty good. We go into the battle phase, we beat over his poor Phantom Knight. We set ourselves a dragon and the Shaddoll Fusion, and we simply pass the turn. Anti-Spell Fragrance at this point prevents us from using the spells during their first turn as well. It has to be a full cycle. So unfortunately, our opponent is yet again going to be able to do the Swap Frog combo going into Totally Awesome, and we can't do anything to stop him. He beats into Dragon, for some reason chooses not to negate it, as Totally Awesome is returned to the deck. During our draw phase, we draw into Alistair, and at this point, we know it's game over. We activate Alistair, which he chains Sanctum to in order to prevent us from special summoning, but we chain our Shaddoll Fusion going into Apkalone. At this point, the chain resolves, and we get ourselves the Invocation. We nullify his back road anti-spell fragrance, and our opponent surrenders, giving us a clean 2-0 win against Froggy Boys. For game number 3, if you could believe it, we are once again up against Dogmatika Invoked. This has become the actual bane of our existence at this point, because I don't think we've taken a single game off of this deck. With our starting hand, we have a Super Poly and a Dragon, which we simply decide to both set and pass the turn to our opponent, who goes into Magical Meltdown. And at this point, I already know what's coming. Alatir Lester gets activated, they pull a Invocation to their hand, they go into their usual Salamangreat Almirage Secure Gardener combo, going into Mekk-Knights. When Mekk-Knights gets summoned, we decide to pop our Super Poly just to pop Dragon, so we can get rid of Magical Meltdown, as well as going into Construct, which allows us to dump a few cards, eventually setting us a Beast. Our opponent decides to upstart Goblin, drawing him another card, and he activates, of course, Triple Tactics Talent. He activates Invocation once again with a second Invocation that he had in his hand, special summoning yet another Mekk-Knights, then activating the effect of Ecclesia, special summoning itself to the field, passing the turn to us. At this point, we're already in a terrible position because if we attack, it's just going to get negated by Mekk-Knights. So we decide to flip open Beast, which gets negated by an Ash, and we're like, okay. He flips open Dogmatika Punishment, which destroys both of our cards thanks to dumping Entis to the graveyard from his extra deck. And at this point, we're back being in an awful spot. We decide to set ourselves a Hedgehog in case we can actually get something off of it. He attacks into it, the effect activates but is immediately negated by Mekk-Knights. He then punches in with Ecclesia and passes turn. With a Falco in hand and a Wendy we draw, we decide to simply set the Falco, hoping to be able to special summon Construct back to the field and pass the turn. Our opponent, top decking an Invocation, goes into Invoked, which blows up our field. Falco does get to special summon itself back again, but that is not going to be able to help us when he goes back into Alatir Lister, once again drawing yet another Invocation. He is going to swarm the board, goes into Purgatrio, which we know, okay, when this comes out, we're kind of screwed. He bashes into our Falco. No matter what we decide to special summon here, we're going to die anyway, thanks to Oyugidi's damage output. So, he punches into us, and that will be game number 1. Game number 2, we're actually starting off with a hand trap that could be helpful this time. But unfortunately, we also have Shaddoll Incarnation. But we're going to attempt to put Winda on the board immediately to prevent our opponent from special summoning in mass. But of course, he does start with the Invoked core in his hand, activating Magical Meltdown, going into Aliester, borrowing his Invocation, and Invocation is going to be the only special summon he needs. But then he goes into Almirage, and I'm like, okay, what's he doing? Turns out he's sideboarded in a Forbidden Droplet, meaning we are basically screwed anyway. There is not much we can do to having a negated Winda, unfortunately. I decide to pop Shaddoll Incarnation early to get Dragon onto the board in order to attempt to flip his Mekk-Knights back to the hand, if possible, because if he tries to negate it, we have a hand trap in hand. We attempt to get a card back, but he chooses to negate it using Alister, which is very unfortunate. So we're now sitting in top deck mode already. We decide to flip up the Dragon, attempt to get Mekk-Knights back to his hand. He attempts to negate it, to which we destroy it using Ghost Ogre. We then have Instant Fusion, which we decide to pop, but that gets Solemn Judgmented. Ooh, that sucks. Our opponent has an Invocation in hand, which we know about, which he immediately decides to activate, going into Oyugidi's once more. Using the Alistair and Graves effect to shuffle it back to his hand, he gets another Invocation from his deck, and you can pretty much guess what's going to happen from here. Mekk-Knights comes onto the board, he activates Ecclesia, and that is unfortunately enough to seal the game. Another tight loss where we stood no chance whatsoever. For game number 4, we're playing up against the always dreaded Mekk-Knights. We go ahead and start off trying to use a Shaddoll Fusion to get into Winda before passing the turn to our opponent, which he negates with Ash. Instead, we decide to just play our Mathematician, dumping a Trip Clown in order to get into Anaconda and get into Winda that way. Unfortunately, this of course means we spend a lot more resources than we necessarily wanted to go into Winda, but I digress. He sets one, and out comes Mekk-Knight Purple Nightfall, and then I immediately realize what we're in for. He mashes straight over Winda, giving us an Shaddoll Fusion back to our hand, and so begins the Mekk-Knight combos. Girsu comes out, is going to create a token of itself on both players' board. He then special summons back Blue Sky, drawing him into Indigo Eclipse. He links both of them off into Libworld, the Keyblade Master, and then special summoning Indigo Eclipse, I believe, the Ringy boy. He sets World Legacy Succession, flips it face up, and special summons World Armor. World Armor is a huge issue for us because he can just pop shit. He links both of them off to go into Mekk-Knight of the Morning Star, and his combo has just gone everywhere. He manages to climb up into a Crusadia Avramax, which is hard for us to deal with because we don't have a beater that can deal with him, unless our top decking skills are as good as ever and we draw into Super Poly. We attempt to activate Shaddoll Fusion, or sorry, not Shaddoll Fusion. World Legacy Whispers and World Legacy Secret come out, giving them negations, which is bad. We decide to, in the only column that is generally open to us now, we simply go for the Super Poly to go into Construct. It is destroyed by Crusadia Avramax's effect, unfortunately, because it's special summon, but we do end our turn with a beast on the board. But our opponent is very swiftly going to tell us that that is simply not enough. As long as a Mekk-Knight is in a column, effects of the monsters are negated, so he can simply loop them over and over and over, fill his board because there is monsters on our side of the field, and you can probably guess where that goes. He goes into the battle phase after swarming his board. Beast's effect is negated. Or sorry, it is not negated because it's a flip effect, thankfully. but we only get a dragon out of it, which isn't really enough. We draw into a Falco, to which he flips Secret, and I just go, yeah, I am dead next turn. Scoop them up, go game number 2. Game number 2, hopefully going much smoother. We have sighted in things like Lancia to prevent him from banishing, and a bunch of other things that we make him go first, which is very important for Mekk-Knights because they want cards on our side of the field. Our opponent starts off with Girsu summoning 2 tokens and managing to go into a Link Karibo as well as Lib eventually, after special summoning the Indigo Eclipse. He sets a World Legacy Succession, which he activates, getting his World Armor back onto the board. World Armor's effect allows him to draw World Legacy Secret to his hand, or sorry, search it, I should say. And then he goes into what I did not expect to see. He goes into Blackluster Soldier of Chaos, which is hard for us to deal with, but not impossible, seeing as we have the almighty Super Poly. We take it immediately, going into Shekanaga, because it is the only target we can use it for. Dragon will pop a back row, which unfortunately turns out to be Dynamiscus, which will banish our Shekanaga. So unfortunately, we end off on an empty field. Our opponent, however, doesn't really have much either. He activates World Legacy Secret to get World Armor back onto the field once again, activating its effect, but then we chain a Ghost Ogre in order to leave him with no cards on the field. He ends his turn with 3 back row and passes it to us. We go, okay, it's time for Ali Tier Lister. And then comes World Legacy Secret and World Legacy's Whispers. So he summons Indigo Eclipse into a zone, and any zone that has a Mekk-Knight is now negated. We don't really care about the invocation too much, so we decide to use our second Super Poly just to go into Makaba so we have something to beat him with. Unfortunately, having no cards in hand, so his negate is not active, but we're playing on the fact that he doesn't draw anything useful. He doesn't. He sets it back row and passes it back to us as we draw Foolish Burial. We decide to just leave it in hand in case he has a spell he wants to use, beating for 2,500 and pass the turn back. At this point, he knows we have a negate ready, and he doesn't know for what, so he simply passes his turn. We draw into a Shaddoll Fusion, and here I go, okay, I can actually go for game here. I play Foolish Burial to dump a Squamata, to dump a Hedgehog, to draw a Dragon into my hand so that I can normal summon Dragon, and actually beat in for game. I go in with Mekaba, to which he activates Artifact Sanctum, going into Artifact Scythe. Scythe is kind of a big deal, but not for this specific turn, so we simply use Mekaba to beat over it, go in with Dragon, and leave him on a 1-turn clock. Our opponent does his draw, and scoops. We're going to a game 3 today. Woo! Game number 3, and can you guess who's going to have to go first this game? Us. We decide to go into a Magical Meltdown, going into Alistair. Alistair gets hit with an Effect Veiler, unfortunately, so we are just forced to pass. And this is probably the worst spot to be in against Mekk-Knights, because we have a card on our board, and he can just go off. But he decides to use Mind Control, attempting to activate World Legacy Memory, which we negate with an Ash Blossom. He uses our Alistair to go into a Almirage, and then passes turn. We decide to go into Mathematician, dropping Squamata, dropping Wendy, summoning Beast. You've seen this combo done many, many times. And then we simply decide to use our Mathematician to beat over Almirage and deal some damage to our opponent. Our hand is not exactly great in any sense of the word here, so we're forced to use whatever we have. Our opponent sets a card on the special summons Blue Sky, because there are now 2 or more cards in that column. He then goes into Girsu. Girsu will drop a World Armor to the graveyard as he summons Lib. Lib will set a card from the deck, which is going to be World Legacy Succession, which he flips open immediately. It is going to target World Armor, and oh boy, here it comes again. He gets World Legacy's Memory, searches to his hand, special summons Purple Nightfall with the help of said card. Indigo Eclipse then gets dropped. And out comes the big boy once again, Crusadia Avramax. Oh boy, we do manage to draw a card off of him destroying Mathematician. And Super Poly top decking will never stop. We go into Super Poly, this time going into Construct, and thanks to the fact that Magical Meltdown is still on the field, Crusadia Avramax's effect cannot activate, because you cannot activate effects in response to fusion summons. So we actually get to stick a Construct this time and beat in for 2,800 points of damage, and our opponent is now in a bad spot, because anything he attempts to beat into Construct will just die. Blue Sky summons itself from Banish again, but he passes turn with nothing. We draw into a Twin Twister, which I decide to set, and then we just go in for 2,800 again, leaving our opponent on a 1-turn clock. This turn he has to do something or the game is over. He activates Purple Nightfall, drawing Girsu to his hand, and then playing Girsu in order to create tokens. We activate Ghost Ogre in response to this to make sure that he doesn't have enough to go into Lib, and he scoops. For the final duel of today, we're playing up against Ice Barrier Frogs, which is not something I've seen before, but I kind of get why. We do decide to start off with our usual combo, managing to drop an Shaddoll fusion to go into Construct, having Trick Clown on the field, as well as special summoning Falco back. Scomatus effect will drop a Wendy. Wendy will special summon a Beast, and we end our turn with 4 monsters on the board and not much else. Our opponent activates Medallion of the Ice Barrier to search for Prior of the Ice Barrier, then normal summons Dark of the Ice Barrier, allowing him to special summon Prior. He then activates the effect of Goddamn Swap Frog, getting his frog combo off as well. He links 3 of them into a Nightmare Unicorn. When activating its effect, we chain a Ghost Ogre, he gets our construct out, and then he scoops them up. Sure thing. We go into game number 2, now knowing that we're playing up against Ice Barriers, I guess. So I didn't really do any siding for this. Our opponent activates Prohibition and names Invocation. Oh, he's that kind of man, isn't he? So the Alistair in our hand is kind of dead here, but yeah, we do play our Magical Meltdown anyway, and then go into Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion picking up Raijin. We then set a Hedgehog, and then use Raijin's effect to flip himself face down. At this point, we know he's playing Frog, so we just need a strong enough dude on the board to keep him alive. However, he activates Raigeki. Raigeki breaking both of them, and then he flips open Secret Guards of the Ice Barrier. He then is allowed to special summon Dark and Swap Frog thanks to his Ties of the Brethren. Swap Frog's effect is going to activate, dumping Ronin Totem and putting it in his hand. And at this point, I don't think we care. We activate El Shaddoll Fusion to go into App Kalon, with our main deal being to negate the Prohibition. We do the traditional setting of a beast. We dump a dragon as well, just so we can break one of the back row, then normal summon Alistair. Alistair will allow us to draw an invocation to our hand, to which we get chained with Canadia. But we don't care. We go into Invocation now that we can, and our only target, unfortunately, is Kaliaga, but we do get him onto the board. We use our Monster Reborn to pick Raijin back up off the board, and we strike our opponent. We then activate Alistair in our hand to draw back to our hand, shuffle Invocation into the deck, and our opponent is not in a good place right now. He can only activate 1 monster effect on the turn, and his Prohibition is dead. Raijin is going to attack his Swap Frog by flicking him face down, making sure he cannot do the loop. He goes into battle phase to bash us for 1,200 points of damage, and then scoops them up. Another clean win against the deck I don't think I've ever seen before. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be today's episode. Thanks to our efforts, we have earned ourselves 6 star chips today, mostly thanks to the fact that we beat Frogs to the ground twice, but that duel against Mekk-Knights was really, really close. Of course, Dogmatika Invoked manages to stomp on us once again, but it is what it is. There was no challenge this week, thanks to the fact that the Magical Merchant store was under reconstruction, I suppose. But hopefully next week they will come back to normal business. As always, though, if you like my content and like what I do, I suggest you press that subscribe button so you can see everything new that I make. If you're interested in more content from me, then you can always, join my Discord where I talk about things that I do. I also post sneak previews sometimes, or just meme around, because that's what I do. You can also drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below with suggestions for challenges and other things that you might want to see me do. But as always, I wish to see you guys in the next episode, and stay safe out there.